Great to have you on Closing Bell. So let's kick off with a view on how large the SME sector is at this point in time in Namibia. You've got around 28,000, if I'm correct. That's what the number is in terms of the number of SMEs. How large is the contribution to overall GDP?
Well, we haven't seen any of the recent statistics, but I would say that it's pretty close to a quarter. As you move around the country, particularly in the smaller urban areas, not in Windhoek obviously, and the larger urban areas such as Walfish Bay and the northern towns of Oshakati, but certainly around the country you see that significant contribution by the small businesses, particularly the micro businesses. It ranges from the markets, the open markets, right across the spectrum to those who are engaged in making household furniture, tables, chairs, the light engineering services, whether it's building, say, the wagon that goes behind the oxen or the donkeys. It's absolutely amazing what is actually happening in the SME sector, or what you refer to down there as the MSME sector.
In terms of small businesses and starting up a small business, of course, the governments around the world recognize the fact that small businesses can be the engine for job creation. And of course, in Namibia, you've got very high unemployment, estimated at around 50%. That number has been put to question. But of course, we know unemployment is a problem. Is government making it easy to set up a business?
Well, government has acknowledged that it needs to streamline the bureaucracy. There are programs in place. But of course, it's a difficult country in the sense of the size. And in the 13 administrative regions, you can't always have, because of the size of the population, the logistics involved, a government representative office in every region. So it does pose a problem. Let's, for example, look at the southern regions. The Karas region, the main town there is Keetmanshoop. So if you're based in Luderitz and you need to have dealings with, say, the Ministry of Finance, it's what, just over 300 kilometers away. So that is a problem. And then in certain regions, such as Hartap, the region above the Karas region, Hartap, the main town there is Marienthal. Now you have the situation where if you're operating your enterprise in Rehoboth, which is only 90 kilometers away from Windhoek, if you want to have dealings with Ministry of Finance Taxation Department, you have to move south, and that's now 400 kilometers away. So logistically, I think government has challenges, yeah. But I understand it's working on. There's movement in the Ministry of Trade and Industry as well when it comes to registration of businesses and so on.
So of course, this opens up the opportunity for technology then to play an important role here in order to bring government and government officials closer to where these businesses are positioned.
The minister actually kicked that off when he came to office after the last election, where he's had these road shows traveling around the country to create that awareness and also to take the lead when it comes to trying to eliminate some of that red tape. But what is actually interesting is that you see at this expo that we presently have, we have the telecommunications utility and one of the mobile service providers present as well. And the products that they're coming up, specifically encouraging the small enterprises to make use of those tools, that seems to be yielding positive results, getting the SMEs to use the 3G and those sort of devices to improve communication when it comes to dealing with suppliers in the capital city or elsewhere around the country.
What SME businesses are thriving in the economy right now in terms of which sectors are you seeing the most amount of SME activity?
Well, garment manufacturing, it's quite interesting. There's some cut, make and trim activity taking place, supplying into South Africa, into the chain stores there. The South African market, of course, doesn't have always the appetite to source the millions of units that the Far East would want. So they need smaller volumes, say 200,000–300,000 pieces. And I've seen some interesting developments there in a town called Arandis, where garments are being produced for a South African chain on a cut, make and trim basis. That's where the chain supplies the pattern, the material, and the labor, the trimmings and so on are added here. Leather manufacturing is another interesting one. Being, of course, having a strong German presence here, leather goods has always been very popular amongst the German population, and that's a high number of tourists coming from there. So leather manufacturers, I see a lot of those in footwear, handbags, and so on. And then, of course, there is the tourism sector. Namibia has done very well in marketing itself as a tourism destination, mainly, of course, in Western Europe amongst the Germans. And it's so encouraging to see smaller, emerging, shall we say, novice entrepreneurs moving into that space as well.
Danny, one of the constraints I can imagine is the fact that it is a small economy. The domestic economy only has so many consumers. So how competitive are local small businesses and smaller businesses outside of Namibia's borders?
Well, there's always, of course, the cross-border trading that takes place in the urban areas that are closer, say, to that very populous and fast-growing southern Angola. So we've seen a lot of trade, cross-border trade there. And in areas, if one moves further west, Rundu across into Kwatwitwi. And then, of course, there's always been the Katima Malilo into Shisheki, Kasani, Botswana. So that cross-border trade has been there. But what is encouraging to see now, and at this expo, that several of the small enterprises are making use of support programs, mainly run by the Ministry of Trade and Industry, that takes them or partially sponsors them to go into markets, neighboring markets. So, for example, Ministry of Trade and Industry has taken some SMEs to expos such as the Zimbabwe International Trade Fair in Bulawayo, the Lusaka show, into the shows up in Angola, not only in Luanda, but also in Lubanga. So we see some of that, but it's still restricted mainly to sort of garment manufacturing, traditional attire, a little bit of leather goods, handbags, that sort of thing. We need to see more perhaps of those in the service sector. Yeah, because Namibia has quite a developed subsector there in ITC, so computer programming, websites, that sort of thing. So we need to see a little bit more being done to encourage those to get into some of the neighboring markets like Botswana, Angola, Southern Angola.
Fascinating developments though, Danny. Thank you so much for joining us. Really interesting having you on the show today, Danny Meyer, Director of SME'S Compete.